morning at NTV. We're live from Kampala Serena Conference Center. Now we're in the gardens. I'm Andrew Chama, Geromuntuawensi. Now we're in a political race where everything seems to be political in one or the other. And if you got yourself a copy of the Daily Monitor this Saturday morning, you saw the big headline that had General Mugisha Muntu saying that we can win Museveni, end of quote. That was General Mugisha Muntu. He happens to come from the Alliance for National Transformation, that is the ANT party. And just a few days ago, they said the delegates conference wasn't running. We're having General Mugisha Muntu this Saturday morning to help us understand the new dynamics and how it's affecting the opposition. Good morning, General.
Good morning.
Well, to start with, today you're the big story, you're the leading story. We can defeat Museveni. That's the statement you used.
Yes.
Try to shed more light to us, for us, because it's a big statement.
Yes.
And with what is currently happening, COVID-19, and the opposition in disarray, if I may use the word, how can you achieve that?
First, we have got 70 million voters. If we get a big turn-up of the 17 million voters, if you get like 14, 15 million voters, and looking at the situation as it is right now in the country, the majority of the people would want to see change. And therefore, if one is able to organize that effectively and ensure that, one, you have candidates, two, you have got agents who will be organizing the campaigns and also protecting the vote, I don't see any reason why we would not be able to overwhelm the regime in spite of the odds that they put in our way. It's just simply a question of organization and also a question of doing things which are necessary to raise the hopes of people. Because the only way we can lose this election if the people remain plunged in a state of hopelessness that they seem to be in. But they need to recognize that when you want change from something poor to something good, you have to work for it. It just can't fall like rain. And therefore, we will have to keep on talking to people that the future is in their hands. They're the ones who must determine what kind of future they want.
General, what do you make of the current electorates in the country? When you look at them with what is awash on social media, and whenever you watch TV and they're putting out these opinions, what do you make of the electorates?
The electorate really needs leadership in most times. You don't want to... I see people who discourage them in a sense. I see some politicians, unfortunately, who tend to say that this situation is impossible, and that's the worst kind of leadership you can offer in a state of hopelessness. When there's frustration and loss of hope in any situation, leadership requires you to give hope where there's hopelessness, to cause people to recognize that for them to change their situation from an undesirable state to where they desire to be, they have to participate. There's absolutely nowhere in the world where people have improved their lives by simply laying back or remaining in a state of hopelessness and not acting on that situation. And that's exactly what we all need to do as leaders who want to see positive change in this country. That's what we keep doing in the Alliance for National Transformation. That's what we keep speaking to, and we keep on organizing. And we are really happy in the sense that we see a lot of positive responses from all over the country, getting candidates who are coming to us because they keep hearing our message of hope. They keep hearing our message of possibilities. They keep hearing our message of how to shape the future, because that's where we're heading. You don't have to keep stuck in the past. We've had a raw deal, yes. It's agreeable. Everybody understands that we've been having a very bad situation that we've been going through, but that we have to work towards the future. We don't want to continue in this kind of situation. And therefore, every Ugandan who wants to see positive change must participate in all ways. Those who can be candidates, be candidates. Those who can give support in terms of policy to the opposition parties that they choose to support, let them do so. Those who want to offer money, let them offer money. We can change this situation. It's not impossible.
Okay. General, let's look at the delegates conference that was for the ANT. That was, you wrote to the powers that be and they never responded, and subsequently you had to shift it.
Well, unfortunately,
SOPs,
unfortunately they responded, but on 5th of August, when our delegates conference was slated to be on 6th. So that means we had only one day.
Mobilize.
Of course, we had to cancel the delegates conference. Today, the party is having a meeting. The leadership of the party is having a meeting today, and that's when it will be determined as to what to do next. Yes.
Let's talk about the SOPs, the new SOPs that are suggesting that before you, at the village level, the ones that were released last week, where you're going to meet your ground team, that you meet them, but it's police to look at the magnitude of the people you're going to meet and the space available. What do you make of these new SOPs? Are they leveling the ground in one way?
If the police acts in a professional way, I wouldn't see a problem in that. Because, for example, if you have a playground and you maintain the 1 or 2 meters, whatever the standard is, that's easy to go through that, because it's just a question of placing chairs 1 meter apart or 2 meters apart, whatever it is. And then you'll have people as many as can fit within the space that you do have. If the police doesn't operate in unprofessional ways, yes, that would be possible. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Talking about we can defeat Museveni in if we
But
wish
at the same time, on the other side, I'm not so sure that the Electoral Commission is going to enforce the standard which they have said that there should be no rallies. Just 2 days, I think a day or two ago, I just seen what has happened in Koboko, in the Anita situation. We are going to wait and hear what the Electoral Commission says. If the Electoral Commission really feels that they are not going to control the regime side, because 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we again saw senior leaders of the movement in churches, which churches are still locked down. They don't allow prayers to go on in the churches. Yet political meetings are being held there. The regime has not reacted. The Electoral Commission has not reacted. We have seen the Anita situation. We wait to hear what they say. If they are not able to control the regime side, then the best thing they can do is to lift for all. So that we all go in there and
you have a level playground.
We have a leveled or uniform activities. And I have a feeling that the recklessness of the regime, I highly doubt whether the Electoral Commission is going to have any control. So they are better, advised to really lift. Because there is no way they fail to control one side, and then they expect that they can control another side. That is not going to be tenable.
When you're looking at all these, the level playground, the regime doing what it's doing and the opposition, what are some of the prerequisites the oppositions needs to work on to make sure that they speak one voice and they change the regime?
We're hoping that one, we recognize there are two major objectives. One, regime change. Two, managing power better. And one of removing the regime, that there needs to be some form of cooperation. We ourselves in the Alliance for National Transformation have always positioned ourselves in a way that would make it possible to have an environment within which we can collaborate in whatever nature. So we keep waiting. We can only do what we have to do. There's no way we can manage others. Others need to manage themselves as well. Yeah.
So, as a whole bloc, General, what does opposition need to do? ANT is organizing and it's trying to put out the structures, because what you're always drumming for is to have organization from the grassroots to the national level. Now that is ANT. The whole spectrum of opposition, what do they need to do as opposition to bring about the change they're talking about?
In the absence of putting in place the infrastructure that was necessary, we were affected by the lockdown. We therefore shifted focus, and now we would want to organize around candidates. That's why we are doing all things humanly possible to see that we get candidates at LOC 3 council level, LOC 5 council level, LOC 3 chairpersons, LOC 5 chairpersons, mayors of townships, of municipalities and of cities, women members of parliament, and constituency members of parliament. Because where there is absence of structures, then we organize around those until after elections, when we can go back and start building the branch networks.
talking about 2021, where we are now in a political wave. All that is happening, everyone seems to be in the sense of how are we going to sail through the scientific election? How are we sailing through the scientific rallying and campaign? We need to take your mind on that, pick your mind on that. What do you make of the scientific rally or campaign? It's even vague.
Well, I suppose they mean digital or media-based
Yes.
campaigns. And we still have contestation over rallies because we've been seeking to have a meeting organized by the Electoral Commission with the Ministry of Health officials. Because up to now, we still think that we need evidence. Why are
From
they?
the scientists.
Yeah. And we need to hear from them. If we are all going to go in this digital campaign fully satisfied that it is not possible to hold rallies, and it will be good. I can't understand any reason why the regime itself and the Electoral Commission would not want all of us, all sides, to meet and listen to those who say that we can't have rallies, when on a daily basis we see crowds of people in some of the locations, as we've already said, in Chikubo, in Taxi Park, in Owino Market. You see people there on a daily basis. And we're going to go through the electoral process when the situation is similar, like that. I don't think that we're going to see another lockdown unless there is a massive outbreak. But since the lifting of the lockdown, we don't see signs that people are going to hospital. Those who've been operating in Chikubo on a daily basis, those who've been operating tax parks on a daily basis, those who've been on Owino on a daily basis. So we need to have that conversation. I really do not understand why any group that wants to see fairness or to see that the country goes together, moves together into the electoral process and comes out together in a peaceful way, I don't see why they wouldn't organize that kind of meeting so that we listen to each other. Because if there is evidence, if we are convinced that really there is going to be an outbreak if there are rallies, then we would speak for it. But there's no way we can speak for anything over which we are not yet convinced by the evidence given to us by the professionals. Yes.
That's what you say.
Yes. So there's still contention on that. I mean, we are waiting to hear what they do. Are they going to put sanctions on those candidates in Koboko? Because if they are not able to put sanctions, then they are just better stop telling us the crap about not having processions and rallies.
Do you think in any way it's politically motivated or political cover just to get through this season?
Yeah, we suspect that this whole thing is just manipulation. Yes.
For all that.
Yes.
Well, let's look at the election financing.
Yeah.
Whenever we get into the election season, there is a lot of money that goes into circulation, and this affects our economy over time, post-election times. Talking about election financing, where do you see 2021? Because there is a lot of lockdown on different avenues and mobilization, where even parties like yours would mobilize members to fundraise in one or the other to make sure the logistics and the operations run are all hampered in one or the other. Do you see a level ground as well with regards to finance?
Well, there just can't be a level ground because, one, the regime, the NRM uses our money. I mean, we have no doubt about that. When you see all the manipulation of the budget, almost like the last 1 year, the supplementaries that have been passed were massive. And our suspicion is that they were simply building a campaign war chest.
More like a buffer.
That we'll only know when we take power, because that's the only time you'll be able to access the financial flows from different ministries and all that. But we also know informally because at least informally we get to know. The only thing we are not able to get is clear evidence, written evidence. But informally we know. And it's not only now, it's been going on for a long time. They just use our money, taxpayers' money. Now, the opposition side is where there are a lot of challenges. But we'll have to do all things that are necessary to be done to ensure that we are able to mobilize resources internally within the population. And again, that's where the population, we need to keep talking to the minds of the people who want change, because financing is a critical factor in the change process. Because like the candidates that we do have, there are many good young men and women who are running for councillors, who are running for LC3 chairpersons, who are running as members of parliament. They need resources. On their own, they are not able to raise that money. And therefore, the vehicles under which they are running, definitely like in the Alliance for National Transformation, we will be reaching out to Ugandans who want change to ensure that we get the resources to put behind those young men and women who are staking it out, who want to be part of the change process. And therefore, we hope that those who want change, but who are not necessarily candidates and who are not necessarily directly involved in politics, that they can give the necessary financial backups for us to realize this change, which is absolutely necessary.
Looking at the people you've mentioned, one thing stands out. More youth are now getting interested in this. Yes. They're now getting involved. There is a lot of inclusion from all levels. You on record, you told people, please go pick the forms and make sure that you be part of the process. Yes. What do you make of the youthful generation that has now started to pick interest in the way the politics of this nation is run?
It gives us hope. Because one, in terms of statistics, the youth, the young people are the majority in this country. Under 35, about 75%. And we have a very challenging situation that we're operating within. The majority of the people don't have jobs. And therefore, the more the young people who are already of voting age recognize that it is within their means to shape the future in which they want to live, the better for all of us, because they can use those numbers not only to cause change of the regime, but also to participate in a positive way, at least in the vehicles that create the necessary platforms for them to participate in causing positive change. We are 45 million people as we speak. 25 years down the road, we are going to be around 100 million people, which means that a young man or young woman who is 20 now, by the time they get 45, will be 100 million people. They need to look at that. So if we don't build a foundation now on the basis of which they would be having their lives better than they are now, getting access to education, getting access to health, by that time they'll be having families. That means they must be taking care of how they will take care of the children at that time, because when they are 45, they'll be having big kids. The number of them maybe will be getting out of universities. They need to know that how will they get jobs? How can they access good health services? How can they get into good education? All that they have to think about now. And therefore, it is necessary for them to participate in this particular election to ensure that they influence the future, where we are heading.
Okay, General, some people, yes, are getting involved, and the youthful, actually, the inclusion rate is getting there. Is it the lack of the ideology from some parties where these people subscribe to, or is this the lack of leadership from village level? Like you say that if we have leaders from the village level, that can actually impact and create this awareness with regards to the ideologies of the different parties. We can have the involvement really robust. Now, we are having them coming through, but are they well aligned with the ideologies, with the national framework, what we need to achieve as a nation and all that?
Two challenges that I notice, because we don't have consensus more or less, even in the opposition side. We have two different voices emanating from the opposition. Yeah. You hear some who are saying this is an impossible situation. Yeah. I think that's a big impediment. Yes. Because even when you're going to war, or those who are involved in sports, or those who are involved in any endeavor, business, hope is a very big factor to succeed in whatever you are doing. So any leader worth their whatever position they hold, you always have to be giving hope. Because there are always possibilities, even in the worst kind of situation.
Yeah.
So you have to keep pointing the people who listen to you towards those possibilities. Don't focus them on the dark side of the situation. I mean, it is,
Deal with the dark side as a leader.
You just, because there is no situation which is completely dark,
Yeah.
it's just not possible.
There is a silver lining.
There is always a silver lining. So you have to keep pointing them to that. My hope is that all those who are in the opposition need to learn that. Two, even in the opposition, there are those, because of the frustration of people, because of the state of hopelessness, who only focus people on the immediate. It's understandable, human nature. If something is pressing you, you can easily focus on how to get it off your back.
Yeah.
But the situation we are in requires you to focus people on two things. One, the immediate regime change, but two, which is even more critical, how do you manage power? Because we have had many changes
When
of
it
regime
comes and
in the
you're
last
not ready.
58 years. So if people are only focused on just regime change, then it means that they can have any change. But there must be qualitative change. There must be leaders who know the dynamics that prevail in our political situation. They must know the intensity of the corruption that there is in this country. They must go in ready to wipe out that corruption. Because if they don't go in well organized, having had plans in place and psychologically prepared to fight corruption and eliminate it, it means that the possibility of them getting in there unprepared and they just become like those who are in there is high. Now you can imagine the worst situation that can happen is to have General Museveni and his regime removed, the next group goes in and it just continues doing the same thing.
Messing up the whole thing.
What kind of change would that be?
That
We
is a
need
messed up change.
qualitative change, and therefore we need to focus our people, the whole country. The change is dual. That there's change of regime and managing power better. And recognizing that for the last 58 years, no group has ever managed power according to the expectations of people. That means there's a challenge in the management of power. And therefore, people who take power next must really be well organized and cohesive, working around the same program, and moving in concert to ensure that whatever they want to do, that they do it on a consistent basis until the cries of our people are responded to. That's not going to happen by accident. Positive change is not going to fall like rain. It must be well planned. It must be conscious.
And someone has to
people
be
must be
involved.
aware of that.
And inclusion is key, like you say. Well, thank you so much, General. It
You're
was an
welcome.
honor to have you this early morning. But one thing, as we're winding up, just one thing. Do you think our nation needs a national institute that can train the leaders of this nation?
Yeah, I mean,
Because South Africa has AC and rather ANC.
schools should be training ground leadership. Churches most should be training grounds for leadership. The parties themselves, because they're the vehicles of
They should have
governance,
colleges.
must have, elaborate plans in which they keep on training on a consistent basis for leadership. And of course, other areas like in the private sector is also a good ground in which leaders can be trained, because mostly when you have people who are well trained in the corporate world, even when they move into politics, if they are touched a little bit in terms of the political dynamics, they'll offer good leadership. So leadership is a critical factor in a change process in any country. Unfortunately, we don't pay attention here. Here, in politics, everybody thinks, oh, if you get a platform and you get a microphone and you sway people, that means or you become a member of parliament or LC5, they think that it is positions
There is
which
more
make
to that.
leaders. No, it's not the positions which make leaders. Leadership must be prepared for.
Okay. Well, that brings us to our conversation this early morning. It's very gratifying to have the General Mugisha Muntu from the ANC party and to ANT party, Alliance for National Transformation. And this conversation is still going on online. Please follow NTV Uganda on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm Andrew Chamagero Muntu wa ANC. Coming up shortly, it's Farida Nakazwe with Mwasuze Mutia. Good morning.